In USA, death penalty is used in several states since the time of American colonization. More than 50 countries around the world implement death penalty as a way of punishing common crimes, while in some countries prisoners are executed only when serious crimes are committed. As we often see in movies, prisoners are entitled to make one last statement before they die. Final words with a shocking impact that made the souls remembered for a long time. I'm going to tell you notorious words spoken by prisoners moments before their execution. Be warned, some are bizarre, dark, and frightening. I'm Stalin Edgar, and this is Fear the Weird. Do you believe there's more to life than what we're told? Do you have burning questions about hidden and controversial topics? Subscribe to our channel and click on the bell notification to unravel the mysteries of life and the universe. The first prisoner on the list is someone you know very well, especially in the early 2000s, Saddam Hussein. He was the president of Iraq between July 1979 and April 2003, when he was found guilty of crimes against humanity. Hussein was one of the main dictatorial leaders in the Arab world. He is considered responsible for the massacre in the 1980s of the Kurds and for the execution of thousands of people. He was sentenced to death by hanging and executed in December 2006. Before he died, Saddam recited the following words: "There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of God." And before repeating the prayer, Saddam Hussein was hanged. Eileen Werner was an American prostitute and one of the most famous serial killers in the USA. She was convicted of 7 murders between 1989 and 1990. Eileen had a very troubled childhood. She was abandoned by her mother when she was still a child. Her father, a psychopath, was arrested in 1969 and ended up killing himself in jail. At the age of 12, she was involved in drugs and sex, becoming a prostitute shortly after. She justified all murders as self-defense. As far as the criminal justice was concerned, she was a serial killer and thus received 6 death sentences. At the end of the trial, Eileen dismissed her lawyer, gave up all appeals, and asked her execution to take place as soon as possible. She was executed by lethal injection in October 2002, and her last words were as follows: "Yes, I would just like to say that I am sailing with the stone, and I will return, like Independence Day with Jesus." June 6 as the movie. Great mothership and all. I'll be back. I'll be back. I am going to tell you a story of a man who inspired the slogan of a very well-known brand worldwide. In 1976, Gilmore robbed a gas station and ended up killing a man in the city of Orem, Utah. The next day, he repeated the crime, this time in a motel. After announcing the robbery, he brutally killed the property manager. During the action, he accidentally shot himself and the blood traces left behind led to the murderer being quickly captured. Gilmore was sentenced and chose his death by a firing squad, but said the execution had to happen as soon as possible. In January 1977, Gilmore said the following words before he died: "Let's do it." Does this phrase remind you of anything? Does it remind you of any brand? After giving his statement, Gilmore was shot to death. In 1988, Nike ran a campaign with the famous slogan, "Just do it." As it became a very successful campaign, the slogan has spread all over the world and is still used today. The inspiration was revealed by the creator Dan Whedon himself, who presented the slogan to Nike. Did you have any idea that it was inspired by the last words of a murderer? We also have the case of Johnny Frank Garrett. He was found guilty of raping and murdering a 76-year-old nun in 1981. but his case was fiercely debated in 1992 mainly because of two facts. One was that, at the time of the crime, Johnny was just 17 years old. The other is that he was mentally handicapped. He had always pleaded not guilty throughout the trial. According to the defense, it was argued that there were flaws in the proof of the authorship of the crime, since the forensics discarded sample of the sperms collected in the victim. There was much speculation that Johnny was innocent, and yet the Supreme Court ended up deciding on his execution that took place in Texas in November 1992. In his last statement, Johnny said the following: "I'd like to thank my family for loving me and taking care of me, and the rest of the world can kiss my ass." In 2002, executions of mentally ill in the USA were declared unconstitutional. In 2005, they prohibited the executions of juveniles. Since we are talking about criminals who were executed, Ted Bundy could not be left out. One of the most notorious criminals of the 20th century, Teddy was a serial killer, rapist and necrophile convicted of the murder of 36 women. Teddy was much more than an ordinary killer. With blue eyes and dark hair, the boy was always groomed and exuded friendliness, which helped when it came to seducing his victims. His crimes began in 1974, and it is known that the last person he killed was in 1978. The most curious thing about Ted Bundy's case is that he presented himself as his own lawyer in the trials. Carrying himself with self-assertiveness, he received praise and a legion of admirers. After several appeals, Bundy ended up being electrocuted in 1989. For his last meal, he ordered steak, eggs, bread and coffee, but refused to eat on the grounds that he was not hungry. In his last statement before he died, Teddy directly said to Jim Coleman and Fred Lawrence the following: "I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." Jim was one of his lawyers and Fred was the Methodist minister who prayed with Teddy the night before his death. Both nodded despite Teddy being accused of more than 30 murders. It is estimated that he actually killed more than 100 people. Another notorious killer who could not be left out is Andrei Ichikachulo, better known as the Butcher of Rostov. Born in 1936 in a small Ukrainian town, Andrei did not have an easy life and grew up haunted by the story that his brother was murdered and eaten by people who were starving during the Holodomor, a name attributed to the famine caused by Joseph Stalin at the leadership of the Soviet Union. In addition, Andrei had several problems with his genitals, which caused him to have erectile dysfunction and often frustrating attempts at sexual experiences. This does not justify his actions, but for many experts, Andrei's life story influenced the creation of the monster he became. Andrei's first victim was a 9-year-old girl who had her body mutilated and her remains abandoned in a forest. He made more victims among children and prostitutes, all of whom he killed in the same manner. His brother's case of cannibalism seems to have motivated Andrei, since most of the bodies had bite marks. Andrei was arrested in November 1990 and confessed to killing 56 people, although only 52 were found. In his judgment, he referred to himself as an abortion of nature, a mad beast. Death penalty seemed the only solution, which wouldn't have been much for what he had done. Andrei knew what he really was and did not hesitate to accept the death penalty. Before he died, Andrei's last words were as follows: "Don't blow my brains out, the Japanese wants to buy them." He was executed in February 1994 with a gunshot to the head. These were the last statements of people who were sentenced to death. From notorious serial killers to possible unjustified convictions. Which one did you find the most intriguing? Leave your comments below and subscribe for future videos. See you next time.